Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show once again. And up first here on the hazardous weather graphic, we've got red shaded areas here, which includes the Alaska Range and areas east and south of the Fairbanks zone there with well, that's a winter storm warning for snow. That's out this evening, ends by 10 p.m. to midnight in that time frame there, give or take, but it'll be definitely after midnight. It should be over with. And looking for an additional 2 to 4 inches of snow on top of what's already fallen in these areas there. And its heaviest snow amounts have been up toward the Alaska Range and along the Alaska Highway on over to the Canadian border. And some area, and also winds gusting 30, 35 miles an hour, like a Delta Junction out of the west. That's creating blowing and drifting and reducing visibilities, hence the warning. Back here, winter weather advisory is out for this evening. Actually, this ends, I believe, at 10 p.m. and even sooner here in the mid-Tanana Valley there around Tanana. That may end early this evening as the whole system moving eastward. And so there'll be additional snowfall, but lesser amounts, lighter winds than what we have in the warning area there. Otherwise, no watches, warnings, or advisories anywhere else in the state for tonight and tomorrow. And satellite imagery showing quite vividly showing a pretty good storm here, center wrapping up there just south of the North Gulf Coast, and then moving inland. You can tell it's breaking up as it rolled over the Wrangell Mountains there. And front pushing in across the panhandle, that's what was responsible for the high wind warnings that were out. And winds along the coast in areas gusted as high as 60 to 65 miles an hour. Let's see, Cape Decision had gusts to 63 miles per hour, I believe, and Heidelberg, 62 miles an hour, right around 60 miles an hour or so. Otherwise, winds also gusting as high as 50 miles an hour at Yakutat reported as well. And to go along with the wind, a fair amount of precipitation, moderate to heavy here with Ketchikan right under this southerly flow earlier on, moved off to the east now, so that's going to start lightening up if it hasn't already. They had nearly 2 inches of rain in the 12-hour period ending at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Otherwise, rainfall amounts across the southeast coast were rather varied and variable, with Petersburg picking up about 1.25 inches of precipitation, and then by contrast, Wrangell only had about a third of an inch, and Cordova also about a third of an inch of rain today, Yakutat 9/10, and then lighter amounts here over the southeast interior. Areas north of the Alaska Range, or Chicken to Eagle, had about anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of snow today, and otherwise rain or precipitation amounts weren't that impressive other than those two locations. They're generally lighter and really scattered out here when you get south of the Alaska Range. Winds, northwest winds gusting behind this system as it lifts northward. You can see the gradient here across south central Alaska. And Seward seeing winds gusting to, 52 miles per hour this afternoon out of the north. And again, the windy conditions gusting upwards of 30 miles an hour at Chitina, Copper River Basin, mixed precipitation in there in areas. Up to the north, light snow, about ½ inch falling at Barrow today. They had 0.05 of an inch water equivalent. So if you do a conversion to that, roughly ½ inch of snow. And areas of light snow, mainly along this trough, and then really just flurries here off to the east. Clearing out, high pressure near St. Lawrence Island. So eastern Bering Sea here in Nunivak Island and from Bristol Bay on northward, clearing out with this system here staying mostly to the south. Pretty weak also, just 1,006 millibar low in the frontal boundary, just barely can make it out actually. But it's got moisture, clouds, light rain, fog, drizzle with it, Pribilofs, and trying to get down to the eastern Aleutians. Showers here for the Alaska Peninsula. Forecast for tonight, I just sketched that in as a trough as it continues to slide eastward. So look for some light rain, fog, drizzle type of conditions here. Low flying conditions will scoot up the Alaska Peninsula. Actually, some of that might reach Sitkinak. I don't think it will, but that's about as far north as it'll get due to the northwest winds that were gusting pretty good across Kodiak Island today. Those will be coming down slowly tonight as the low weakens and pulls off to the northeast. Actually, one portion does pull off to the northeast, another one remains in the Gulf, and that's due to the northerly winds coming down. On the back side of that kind of maintains the low center in the Gulf, and the one due to the upper level divergence continues on to the northeast. And the front's out of the picture, but a couple of troughs. So this low back in the Gulf, southwest flow, keeps the pattern wet, but not as windy, not as wet, with the rainfall rates a lot lighter. Areas of light snow, upper level troughs kind of coming southeastward here with high pressure building into the west, keeping snow chances going, light snow chances over the eastern areas and along the north side of the Alaska Range. Cold front, light snow at times, central eastern Arctic coast, but again, no big amounts expected. And the outlook for tomorrow, this low slides southeastward, continues to weaken, about no gradient over the Panhandle. But again, southwest flow with another trough still off the coast. It'll stay mostly cloudy with diminishing showers throughout the day. And again, still a chance of snow over the upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country. Arctic front, weak Arctic front. Keeps a chance of snow in much of the Arctic coast, especially on the central and east side. Sunshine here into the interior, high pressure right over the Yukon Delta coast, and still have an offshore flow pattern here, but not very strong. But it will be mostly clear. Kodiak Island up into the Copper River Basin, Madawaska-Susitna Valley, northwestward there to the Seward Peninsula, even St. Lawrence Island. And this weak low pushing moisture, again, of the kind of chance of rain, chance of light rain for the Pribilofs, chance of light rain, eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, chance of sunshine, central Aleutians, and right here, kind of a weak front. This mess kind of in advance of the big storm coming up during the day on Sunday. As we'll see, there's the warm front associated with it, with pretty good rainfall coming in with that warm front. This was an ex-typhoon that's going to get re-energized here by cold air coming down out of the Russian Far East. Otherwise, we've got a pretty good storm now south of Kodiak Island on Sunday afternoon here. May affect Sitkinak, increase the clouds on the east side of Kodiak Island, but areas to the north, pretty nice. Sunshine, dry, winds light right up through the central interior on out to the north slope in the Arctic coast. And again, upper level system keeps chance of showers here, snow showers over the eastern interior, but nothing significant. And sunshine for the Panhandle. Chance of showers early on here over towards Stewart and Hyder, just a chance though, otherwise not too bad. And for the lows tonight down that way, mid-30s to lower 40s, otherwise 20s to lower 30s here for southern Alaska. Teens in the Alaska Range and lower teens, or single numbers up over the Brooks Range. Highs for tomorrow staying a little near or below freezing central eastern Arctic coast and a little below 40 on the west side there, otherwise near 20 for the Brooks Range. Upper 20s to lower 30s, eastern central interior, mid-30s Copper River Basin, 40 to 45 south central Alaska, 40s to lower 50s in the Panhandle, and lower 50s here for the Alaska Peninsula, and near 50 for the Aleutians. Highs or lows for the following morning, again 5 to 15 here, Brooks Range, colder elevations, or the higher elevations, the higher valleys of the Brooks Range, and down to 11 out Eagle, Northway Toe could get down maybe even colder than 10 degrees. You can see, I believe that's Denali Park with a forecast low of 8 above, 20 south central Alaska, teens in the Madawaska-Susitna Valley, and mostly in the 30s there for the Panhandle, followed by highs staying below freezing, upper 20s some cases here for the east side on up to near 20 for the eastern Brooks Range, freezing at Barrow.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic here for Saturday morning. Area of IFR here just north of the central Aleutians. Otherwise, marginal VFR bearing sea and the Aleutians with some IFR, at least a start for the false pass over to Unalaska Island. Breaking out to VFR here for the southwest coast on up to part of St. Lawrence Island. And then some IFR here for the Kobuk, Selawik valleys up into the southern slopes of the mountains up there. Off to the east though, VFR, some lingering or marginal VFR here along the Alaska Range, the Kuskokwim Valley, and the upper Tanana Valley down across the Wrangell Mountains into the Gulf, marginal for the Panhandle. And then for the afternoon, stays pretty marginal there for the southeast coast. Actually, probably starting out marginal and then staying marginal there for the panhandle. Otherwise here, VFR, southern Alaska, we've got some lingering marginal VFR in areas on the north side of the Alaska range, but conditions are going to be improving throughout the day, even up in this area. Maybe some IFR here for the western Koyukuk Valley, back up into the DeLong Mountains, marginal for the North Slope and Arctic coast. Stays VFR along the southwest coast, Nunivak Island, all the way down into Bristol Bay. IFR, that zone actually expanding here, or actually shifting up into the Alaska Peninsula, and then developing IFR coming into the eastern Aleutians back to about Attica, and then right on the edge there's some IFR. That may hold off until Saturday evening. And then for Sunday morning, get the another front actually develops with another batch, the next big storm coming eastward here. So IFR with that. More widespread IFR southeast Bering to the Alaska Peninsula, Fox Islands. Not too bad here over southern Alaska, but we got IFR for the Koyukuk, western upper Yukon Valley down in the central interior areas, about the mid-Tanana Valley, back toward the Nulato Hills, marginal for the Arctic coast. And the southeast coast looking good. Sunday morning, VFR, Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound, south central Alaska, Kodiak Island, all VFR, and that holds pretty much through Sunday afternoon, but Kodiak down here starts going does go marginal, and that even crosses Shelikof Strait to the Aleutian Range on the east side there, but basically staying VFR here, southern Alaska, and get some areas of marginal VFR, or marginal with areas of VFR here from about the central interior out toward the Seward Peninsula. Really not all that bad. Lingering some marginal VFR in over the southern southeast coast. And let's push ahead to Anaktuvuk for passes. Starting out marginal, becoming VFR. Same forecast for Adigan. Marginal VFR early on, and then VFR probably for most of the day, late morning on. And Lake Clark and Merrill, in the case of Lake Clark, the marginal conditions in the morning will be briefer than they will be at Merrill, but both will become VFR probably before noontime. And rainy, take a little longer there, marginal VFR to VFR. And windy will take even longer than rainy. Starting out marginal, and then I'd go for VFR mid to late afternoon, maybe a little sooner, but taking a little longer. Isabel marginal becoming VFR. Mentasto in the moisture there, so they're going to start out IFR and probably won't go VFR until Saturday evening. And for Tanita, no problems there. Good VFR tomorrow. Portage also VFR. And Chilkoot and White, lowest conditions early, VFR to finish. And for the freezing levels at the surface, up along the west coast here and along the north coast of Bristol Bay and the outer coastline, or about the south central, or right up along Cook Inlet, North Gulf Coast, northern Panhandle, then 2,000 to 3,000 feet for the southeast coast there. And about 4,000 feet here for the south central Bering Sea to the central Aleutians. And as far as icing goes, above about 4,000 feet of the mixed variety here, light for the eastern Aleutians, north slope same thing, and the Panhandle a little heavier but mixed and diminishing throughout the day. Jet stream, that trough tomorrow slowly shifting across the southeast coast, staying unsettled there. 200 knot jet with that next big storm crossing the Kamchatka Peninsula. In the meantime, high pressure along the southwest coast. Light winds, a little brisk up over the northern interior, and 25 to 30 around that low in the Aleutian. Same thing at 3,000 feet. So going to turbulence, pretty smooth here, kind of the calm roughly before the big storm comes out of the western Pacific, northwest Pacific. But turbulence, light to isolated moderate chop, improving. Worse, bumpiest in the morning, smoother in the afternoon, that all diminishing as the winds die off. After the break, I'll be back with the rain forecasts.
Leatherbacks are the largest turtles on Earth, growing up to 7 feet long and weighing more than 2,000 pounds. These sea turtles are among the most highly migratory animals on Earth, some traveling up to 10,000 miles a year between their nesting and feeding grounds. Prevalent in every ocean except the Arctic and Antarctic, the species overall is declining, more so in the Pacific. In the eastern Pacific, the Mexican population was once thought to be the largest in the world and has experienced an alarming decline.
this trajectory of decline that we've seen and actually collapse. We're talking about only 20 or 30 turtles nesting every year, where thousands used to just 40 years ago. That's the kind of dramatic decline.
The western Pacific population has been declining steadily, and it's particularly critical to act now before it collapses, while there are enough turtles and nests to respond to conservation measures. But threats to all leatherbacks in the Pacific need to be addressed.
The top threats to populations are uncontrolled coastal development, all the bad stuff on the nesting beaches, egg harvest, poaching of the females, predation on the eggs by dogs and pigs. Deforestation makes the sand too warm and dry and the eggs don't hatch. Another one is incidental capture in fishing gear. During their vast migrations, they get caught in fishing gear throughout the Pacific. And finally, marine debris, which the leatherbacks mistake for their favorite food, jellyfish, and they choke on those.
Protecting leatherbacks in U.S. waters alone is not enough to ensure the continued existence of the species. The highly migratory nature of Pacific leatherbacks requires cooperation and international collaboration. NOAA is focusing on partnerships with Mexico, Central America, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and the Solomon Islands in the Pacific.
Our action plan promotes a holistic recovery strategy that addresses all the sources of mortality. So that's basically ensuring that the remaining nesting sites are protected and the nests produce as many hatchlings as possible. And then secondly, in tandem with that, is reducing the fisheries-related mortalities. We're working with international partners to incentivize community participation on the nesting beach conservation and developing alternative livelihood programs that wean communities off leatherback resources and introduce alternative methods for food and income. Recovery is going to take a long time, on the order of 20 to 30 years at least, before we see some of these actions bear fruit. But here in the US, we can all help leatherbacks by making seafood choices, for instance, that support sustainable fishing practices. And beachgoers can certainly do their part by keeping our oceans clean of plastic debris, picking up marine litter, particularly plastic bags.
Together with our partners, we are strengthening protection and conservation efforts to ensure a future for leatherbacks, helping them to survive and once again thrive in the waters of the Pacific Ocean.
For over 40 years, NOAA scientists have been collecting data and piecing together the story of the gray whale. Each year, new discoveries are made, revealing the secrets of this ancient traveler. With the northeastern Pacific population recovered, leading scientists from the NOAA Southwest Fisheries Science Center continue their research efforts to help save the western population from extinction. The most effective way to identify individuals and count the population is to photograph them from the surface. Using the gray whale's distinctive markings and gray spots caused by parasites on their skin, scientists document these characteristics to identify individuals.
So we're able to track migratory pathways and corridors by the simple use of photo identification. There are other ways to do that as well, biopsy sampling and genetics.
And from the air.
Aerial photography is one way you can study animals based on their size and shape. So you can learn a lot about nutritive and reproductive condition of whales just by measuring their size and shape from vertical aerial photographs.
You can also put satellite transmitters on them and track them remotely. You put the transmitter on and let them go, and you watch them move across the Pacific or down to China or wherever it might be.
To further learn and discover where these great sojourners swim, the team of researchers traveled to Russia and set up camp on Sakhalin Island.
The main focus of our research while we were on Sakhalin was to collect photo identification. If it was a whale that we had not collected a genetic sample from previously, we would also attempt to collect a sample from the whales.
Whereas whales are endowed with natural insulation, their human observers must gear up to brave the cold in order to study these marine giants up close.
We're typically only able to work about 1/3 of the time that we're there, and that's mostly due to this fog that just invades the area and sits sometimes for weeks on end. So it can be very challenging to try and do field work in this site.
Recently, 2 whales from the western population surprised scientists by migrating across the Pacific to the waters of California and Mexico.
It's a really fun finding. It's added another piece to the puzzle that we didn't previously know about. And I would have to say that it's opened up more questions than we had before.
Research scientists from Japan, Russia, and the United States share images of animals they've spotted.
We take a photograph of an individual off of Sakhalin Island, and we get a phone call from Japanese scientists, and they say, hey, guess what? We've got a picture of a gray whale in Japan. We say, can you send it to us? We'd love to try and match it. They'll send us the picture, we'll compare it to our catalog, and they'll say, hey, we've got a match from Sakhalin to...
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis. Not a lot of difference from what we had yesterday, and really the forecast is about the same, continued slow growth along the edge itself, and no big changes for the next week or so. And for the southeast coast wind forecast, well, we've got small craft advisories, west 25 tomorrow with 15-foot seas, and west 20 on the south coast, and east 15 on the north coast. Lynn Canal, southeast 25, and still looking at some gale force gusts tomorrow for Stevens Passage, otherwise sustained at 15, and Clarence Strait, south 15 with seas 3 feet. Outlook for Sunday, variable 10 here on the south coast, central coast southeast 10, and seas about 7 to 8 feet, and east 15 on the north coast, Lynn Canal north 15 knots, and north winds at about 10 or variable to north for the central and southern inside waters here. Moving on to Prince William Sound, northwest winds at 20 knots tomorrow, turn north at the same speed here for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Small craft advisories for the western North Gulf Coast, the Barren Islands, and Kamishak Bay for northwest winds 25 to 30 knots. Cook Inlet north 15 to 20 knots, and strongest north of the Forelands. For Sunday, switches around, northeast 15 north of the Forelands, southern Cook Inlet northeast at 20, northeast winds 25 for Kamishak Bay, and small craft advisories for the Barren Islands, east 25, turn northeast 25, western North Gulf Coast, light northeast breeze there for Prince William Sound, and east 20 for the eastern North Gulf Coast, seas at about 5 feet. For Kodiak Island on the east side, winds coming down will be strongest later tonight and into tomorrow morning, and then downward trend throughout the day, so west 25 and northwest 20 knots from Castle Cape to Sitkinak, and the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, southeast 20, Pacific side southwest 20, Bristol Bay east at 20. And then for Sunday, things get a little more in sync here as far as the direction goes. Northeast 25, Bristol Bay right on down to Cape Sarachev, and then full gales here, south side of the Alaska Peninsula right up to Sitkinak. East-northeast, 40 to 45 knots, east 30 knots on the east side of Kodiak, Shelikof Strait, 30-knot winds from the northeast. Fox Islands tomorrow, south to southeast 20 knots, around Alaska Island, Umak Island, west-southwest 10 to 15, west 15 for Adak and Atka. Western Aleutians, northwest at 20, turn southwest at 20, west of Kisk Island. For Sunday, southeast 30 knots, got that next front approaching the area there, but it should remain under gale force. And then southwest 25, lighter winds from the west 15 to 20 for Adak and Atka, and northwest 15 to 20 for the Fox Islands. Southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, small craft advisories, east 25, And also for the Pribilofs, east 25, 20-knot winds here for the northern Bering Sea into the Yukon Delta coast, swinging around to the west at 15 for St. Lawrence Island. And then those will become east at 20 on Sunday, southeast 20 north of Nunivak Island, and east 25-knot winds here along the Kuskokwim Delta coast turn southeast at the same speed for the northern Bering, east 15 for the Pribilofs. Eastern Boulevard Sea coast, that's where the winds will be the strongest tomorrow. West 25 to as high as 30 knots, and then falling back to 15 out of the north on the central coast. West side, west 15 all the way down to Cape Thompson to Wales. Nudge it up to 20 knots with 4-foot seas. Outlook for Sunday, Wales to Cape Thompson, south at 10, and then 15-knot winds here up the west side of the coast, diminishing northeast of Point Lay to about west at 10 on the central coast, and northwest 15 for the extreme east coast. And for the outlook tonight, of course, winds and rainfall rates will be much lighter, kind of a little more showery down over the southern panhandle. But southwest flow of this system remaining off the coast, a portion of it, the other portion kicks off to the northeast here, and then upper level troughs coming down out of the north and northwest keep skiffs of light snow going along the east side, drying out, clearing out, and still breezy, but winds will gradually diminish here south central Alaska after kind of a breezy start to the evening tonight. Chance of snow of that front on the Arctic coast. And then this weak system really not amounting to much except for maybe some IFR due to low clouds, fog, precipitation, light snow up here along the Arctic coast. Showers continue over the panhandle. And then Sunday, good storm south of Kodiak Island. Another big storm coming into the scene there late in the day, but widespread rain and wind.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.